right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Paul Rossi, Community Outreach Coordinator with the AUVSI North Carolina chapter. And we've got a really awesome session that we're putting on here this afternoon. Drones in the architecture, engineering, and construction workflows. We've got a great guest speaker, Kyle Snyder with Clancy and Thays Construction Company. They've headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina. They've got offices across the Southeast United States. And this session this afternoon is sponsored by Reviz2, integrated collaboration platform. Kyle, Clancy, and Thays is leveraging the Reviz2 platform, which we're going to learn more about throughout the session. Reviz2, right? I think I said Reviz2, Reviz2. And we've got Daniel Buckner joining us as well to help answer any questions that folks might have towards the end of this session. So thank you, Daniel, for joining us. So we're going to be diving into this here with, again, Kyle with Clancy and Thays. So Kyle, can you just kind of tell us before we really dive into this presentation, just a little about yourself, and you know, if that's part of it, then you know we can roll right into it. But just kind of set the table here for us.
Yeah, it's fine. Queuing up the next slide here. So, just like you mentioned, in the Southeast, so we have 3 offices in North Carolina, 1 in Virginia, and 1 in Florida. A little bit about myself. So, my technical role here is virtual design and construction coordinator. I've been a certified, UAS pilot for, I think 3 to 4 years, somewhere in there. And then I guess my unofficial role is a BIM specialist here at the company. A little background about myself. So, I mean, I just have, over a decade of using the software in the AEC space, background architecture. Coming out of school, worked a few years in the trades, 5 for an architecture firm and 5 for construction. So I've kind of got a good, I think, handle, on the broader scheme here. And a little bit of where I'm coming to you from today is really from the construction space with drones. But leveraging that background, we're going to talk a little bit further about, integrating some of the drones into those AEC workflows kind of across the board. And I think,
just anyone going forward, this is going to be recorded. This session will be made available for folks to see and view at a later date as well, and share with anyone else. And if you do have any questions, go ahead. You can drop those into the chat along the way, and we'll be keeping tabs of those and answering them as necessary. Thanks, Kyle, for letting me interrupt there.
Yeah, no problem. And the slides are working so far, so good, right?
Yes.
Just want to make sure before we get rolling. So I think you mentioned to me about doing a little webinar here, and it's kind of, the spectrum of people. I know you've talked to some folks who aren't even using drones yet, and then I'm sure there's others that are using them. So I'm trying to put some stuff in here where if you're not using them yet, you'll be able to pick up on a few things in the beginning. And if you are using drones, you should see some sort of advanced workflows of how you can, leverage that even further. So I'm not going to speak too much about the drones themselves, but I figured I'd just do one slide here. So what I fly here out of the office is a DJI Phantom 4 Pro. Everything in the slideshow you're going to see is from that model. And if you're new to drones, it's basically between $1,000 and $2,000 price range for the aircraft, which as far as, construction and software costs, it's pretty inefficient or pretty efficient. The other aircrafts that we do see in the space, like we have a few people in my company fly the Mavic 2 Pro. That's pretty popular. And then you get the DJI Inspire. There's a few people running those as well. So those are pretty much your common aircrafts you're going to see.
And I think a great thing is how the mechanical shutter on the Phantom 4 Pro could sometimes, in the mapping environment, be a little more beneficial, and as also an Inspire 2 with like an X4S camera, 20 megapixels mechanical shutter. And you're great. That's a great point that this equipment, you don't have to spend quite a fortune to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, you can go down the rabbit hole of RTK and some other stuff. I'm sure in other webinars, it'll add up. But with that, so pretty much it's just your commercial drone. And the way I kind of view it, and I'm going to kind of run through in this presentation, is really the capture process. So you have your manually controlled flights. That's going to be fingers on the joystick flying it. And then you're going to get your automated flights, the mapping and scanning. And that's where you can really get some advanced workflows. You don't need to pay attention necessarily line by line, but kind of the blue, I think about it also in 3 phases. So you have the documentation of your site or whatever you're trying to document. Then you have your analysis portion of, okay, now we documented, what do we do with that? And then the third part is always, that wow factor, those marketing graphics, kind of above and beyond just the task at hand. And so first, I'm just going to start off with manual photos. So, I mean, the easiest thing you can do is just get up there and just take progress photos. Just if your job site, really no more intent than that. And then if you just put them in a folder, or you could package them together in some monthly reports like we do here. Moving beyond that, really just documenting some work experience or maybe a certain task on a job that you want to highlight for a future project. So in this one, I think we're highlighting some of our grading capabilities here, and then we're also looking at some reusing some of that the asphalt and concrete that we're ripping up. So you can see over to the left, there's that machine there. In addition to that, project milestones, we're starting to do a little bit more of that, topping out ceremonies, you have special events. It's just very easy to get up there with a drone, get a nice photo of what's going on. Now moving more into the construction side, another really easy thing you can do is just field inspections. This is one where we got reports of some leaking at some of these C channels. So before we, brought out a big lift and, paid all the money and whatnot, we can just get up there with the drone, get a good view of this to see if there's anything that jumps out. People are using them all across for many different inspection purposes. And this is one, Paul, where I was actually on another call where they had the Mavic Zoom, and that camera was pretty interesting for the inspections.
Yeah, and it's an ideal platform, like he's like pointing out. You're inspecting this without having to use bring in other equipment, where those rental costs or movement costs, right, just to get that equipment, and then to get those folks up there, could almost be made up in an inspection of a single building.
Yep, yeah, correct. And then the other thing we're starting to do is, hey, you get a photo, you can just overlay, a series of drawings on that photo. I'm going to run through it here with a couple things, but you can do it with a number of different programs. So one of the biggest value that we've found here at Clancy and Days is, we do a lot of concrete work, and there's, the post-tension cabling and just reinforcing that goes into the concrete. So the great thing about the drone is when you really get up high above the job site, you can see what's going on with a lot more clarity than you can down on, the deck itself. So here, I mean, this is still just manual photos. It's a small enough pour, I can get high enough where I can just one photo, get the area I'm looking at. And then we can go ahead and just overlay some drawings on there. So this is a drawing that I produced myself of really the sleeving layout we're trying to coordinate. And this is just a little video here. So me being the background in architecture, I've just used Photoshop for many years. That for me, it's just the easiest way to go about it. But you can also do the same thing in Bluebeam or some other PDF viewers. But for me, I just manipulate the drone photo to align with whatever drawing I'm looking to align. And then I put it on the layer and I just flip it on and off and just kind of back check what should be there. And so again, it's taking that photo of the sleeving, reinforcing, and just overlaying a drawing. And this has probably been the biggest, I guess, return on investment or benefit that we've really started doing here during the construction phase.
And this, I guess, a lot of it is not so much as the photo itself is completely accurate geographically, but scaling. Once you have that image at a certain altitude, now you're just kind of scaling your drawing or your print using a software such as Photoshop in order to kind of visualize, right? Because that's what you're doing here is trying to get a visualization.
Yeah, we're not getting like, I mean, tolerance, you pretty much just look for known elements and then you scale it to match those items. Typically, most sleeves will line up and then you'll find like an outlier or something like that. But you know, I've seen some workflows with like terrestrial scanners and stuff like that doing back checking. But with those, you know, they're tens of thousands of dollars and it's a whole process. And this, it's just, you know, $1,000-something drone. Get up there, get a photo, you know, save yourself schedule and rework time. So these are just a few examples on this one project we picked out. So in this bathroom, there was like a control that somebody knocked over with their foot and set back 5 feet in the wrong direction. So they actually pulled tape off wrong. So we caught that before it got installed. You know, some shafts that are just installed in wrong locations. And this is kind of an example of, you know, if some sleeves are off a few inches, I can kind of see it. And then it's just that relationship with the guys in the field to back check. Moving beyond that, so this would be more visualization if you're coming from the design side of things. You can go up with a drone, get a photo of any site that you want. This is just a rough example of like a designer SketchUp model. But again, using Photoshop, you can just kind of match that view and overlay it. So you get, you know, a nice, you know, basically before and after. I think my days in architecture, it was you're always trying to look for the aerial images from like Google Maps or Bing or something like that and trying to match it. The other one is this is a project they're working with the design team about what a view from on top of the parking deck would be. They're trying to look at a few different options. So what I can go do is go out with the drone, pretty much know, okay, I need to go to this location, go up this high to get a photo. So the top is the photo, the bottom is actually the view from the model. So it kind of was cool both ways. I could see that the drone photo is actually giving you, you know, what it's going to be. And then conversely, the model that we had actually matched the photo. So it was an interesting little experiment there. And then this would be more of like that wow factor kind of stuff. Taking some of our model views, matching them with some drone photos, and kind of creating some of these kind of overlay marketing kind of shots. So you see that drone photo on the top, and then it's kind of integrated with the model there. And then likewise, this is an image that we put together just to show how much underground work actually had to get coordinated. So it kind of makes it pop more than just a single photo or just a single model image.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I can
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
So that's kind of the intro for just manual photos. You know, there's a lot you can do there just right out the box, just, you know, controlling it yourself. Now I kind of want to dive into some of the automated flights. And I guess I'll just start off with the software. So there's a lot of different softwares out there. These are kind of the, I guess, big name ones you'll see. The one at the top is the one that we use internally here. We use SiteScan, which recently got purchased by Esri. But I know many people use some of the other programs. And so first I want to start out with this one, 360 photos. So this is one where I'm using our automated software to do it, but a lot of the DJIs come with it built into the camera setting. I'm not sure the Phantom stitches it. I think the Mavic, if you have that, it'll stitch it together in the program. But this is something that you can use outside of one of these automated programs. But for the sake of this, I use it in here, and the great thing about using it with this program is I can set an exact, you know, waypoint, and it can take that scan over and over again. So what this does, if I flip back here, sorry, on the left-hand side, you can see all the photos. So essentially, it takes like 30-something photos and stitches it together to one 360 image. And the great thing about this is it's a really high-res image that you can get from anywhere on the job site. So this is kind of a project site we're working on in downtown Raleigh. And so you can do this, and just like I mentioned, progress photos. I use this online viewer C.I.P, but there's a number of different like 360 viewers that you can use online. And in this one, I can just upload these 360 images, and now instead of progress photos in a folder, you know, I can get progress photos, but 360 photos that are in a web browser. And what I found is a lot of the project managers and guys on site like these, because you can just see more of the context. You can really look in any direction. It doesn't have to be an exact photo of a particular area, and it just aids conversation very well.
And with that, it's you don't necessarily know what it is that you're gonna find. You're just able to kind of put the drone up at different times, at different points,
Hmm.
and you can capture that entire site picture. And seeing how you've been able, you take this drone and all these different spots around there. Um, Again, this is just taking the drone up. A Phantom 4 Pro, Mavic 2 Pro, some other drones that are out there that are capable of 360 photos. And it's saying, hey, we took these photos. Now what can we see? What can we see that we
Yep.
couldn't see before?
Yeah, so with that, if you're using the automated software, the thing that's really cool about that is you can set an exact location, which is like GPS coordinated. So if you're using another software like Hollow Builder just to log your 360 photos, it allows you to upload multiple versions of that photo, and you can actually split screen and go back and dates and compare. So if you're using a system like that, I could take a 360 photo from the same spot over like the duration of time, and that's you get some really cool stuff with that.
And what was the 360 viewer site that you mentioned, or
So I use
software?
SeekBeak.
Seek.
SeekBeak.com is the one I found. It's actually very inexpensive, but if you just Google search, I've seen multiple people use different. There's a quite a handful of them out there. But yeah,
Awesome.
SeekBeak is the one I use.
Awesome.
So then taking that one step further, I kind of mentioned in the 2D photos how you can do like views from a project. So this is an example of where I'm using 360 photos for that. And I'm kind of creating this visual inside SeekBeak. So up in the top right, you can kind of see the elevation of what's going to become the project. And I can just do some simple math and figure out how high I need to fly to get to that kind of level. So I can take those multiple 360 photos and kind of integrate them into this viewer for, hey, this is what it's going to look like, up at the penthouse level versus, the third level, and kind of give you a visual of what's going to be. And then what's cool about that is then I can also take these 360 photos and then some of our real-time rendering software, the AEC software, I can actually load that 360 image in as like a background environment. So you can now start kind of using it as a backdrop for some models. And then this would probably be kind of the culmination of that. And this was a visualization we are putting together for this site where they wanted to show prospective tenants what the building was going to look like, but it was just an empty site. So I was able to get that 360 photo and then take their model and actually export out a 360 rendering, I guess, of their model, and then Photoshop just overlay the two together. And so that's kind of what it looked like there. And if I hop over here, so now you kind of up in the office and see what that skyline view would look like. So, there's a bit more of the visualization kind of architectural side there, but I like you can see, I mean, from what the design was to what it ended up being down the road, just gave you a great visual of what that was going to be.
That's incredible. And sneak peek, right?
SeekBeak,
Seek
SeekBeak.
seek beak. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Some couple folks kept asking what exactly that was there,
Yeah, I
but
think
that's really
I forget the other ones I've seen up there. I think like Qpix, and there's a number of them people use, but I like that one. You can actually link together URLs, and you can it's yeah, it's a pretty cool site.
awesome.
So now we get that out of the way. Now this is kind of the best for last, I guess. This is now we're going to get into the actual mapping itself. This kind of visual of what we get there, but just to describe it, we're going to basically it's using photogrammetry, which the simplest explanation is the science of calculating measurements from photos. So you upload a number of photos and it figures out what the 3D geometry of it is. And so here's a little workflow of what it would look like inside SiteScan. So you pretty much just draw the boundary of your site that you want to map, and then you have settings over on the left-hand side. You could set the height, and it'll tend to figure out the grid pattern for you, and you can always tighten it up and adjust some settings to kind of fine tune it. But it does a lot of the work for you, I would say. And so you go out to the job site, and I mean, I use an iPad mini. Some run on iPhones, different devices. But this is essentially what you see. So you get the grid pattern, your drone's flying, your home point, and at the bottom, it's a little blurry, but basically you're taking hundreds of photos. And the great thing about doing this is it's taking photos as the drone's continuously moving. So it's surprisingly pretty quick and efficient. And I think, Paul, that's where you're talking about what did you say, the rolling shutter of the Phantom 4? I mean, I've seen the
The
Mavic 2 coming out very,
mechanic,
oh, sorry, yeah,
yeah,
mechanical.
mechanical shutter. But go ahead. What you
No,
were
I was going
saying?
to say, I've seen some scans coming right out of the Mavic 2, and they look almost just as good. So, but that's something, yeah, where there may be a benefit of having the Phantom 4 in there. But
And I'm not sure exactly. I know there's some software, some of the stitching takes into account the different platforms, and the software will actually kind of correct that blur in a sense, knowing that based on how much movement there is. But I think at the end of the day, right, a lot of folks are going to say, oh, mechanical is better. And then, folks who are doing things with um, the global shutter, leaf shutter, like, they're still finding results and creating solutions.
gotcha. Yeah, so this at the end here, this is essentially you upload all the photos and this is what it spits back out to you. So you get, in most of these programs, you get a couple of different file types, which I'll kind of show here in a second. But this is just the visual you get right from photos, which is pretty remarkable. And so you essentially get three file types. You get like a top-down site plan, like a 2D file. Then you get the 3D files. There's two different ones you can get. You can get a point cloud or a mesh file, and they each have their own benefits to each one of them. And then I would say this is where our sponsor would come in. This is where I'm really leveraging Revisto. Is I'm getting those 3D geometry, the 2D scans, and then I have all my project files, the models for the job sites, and I'm using this to really integrate them all into an integrated platform. So you'll see this in some slides here coming up. So now we're going to jump into kind of the AEC integration, like what are we doing with these 3D files and 2D files? So the easiest thing is I can pull that point cloud down, and any modeling software, like this is Revit, for example, I can load in that point cloud. We also have the designer's model, so I can load in the architectural model. And now we have, them together living in one environment. We can, create sections, do all kinds of views we would normally do inside our authoring software. And what typically you would do is we would push all this out and combine it in like Navisworks. And so here's kind of a view of what that looks like. But it works okay for certain things, but as you can see, the point cloud is kind of dependent upon, I guess, field of view and where you are. So it kind of sometimes disappears or becomes more opaque. And you're also just dealing with the 3D elements here. So the one thing, oh yeah, and then you got these mesh files, which there's a couple other tricks to that, getting it to show up correctly. So what's really nice about Revisto is I can bring all this together right in one platform, and just the visual, the rendering engine of it, it just works really well. There's no reloading. It just, everything comes through very nice. Let's see. So I'm going to run through a few examples of some things that we've done on jobs and just kind of how the drone scans kind of played their way through them. So on the same site, we had encountered some rock. So we did like a little rock analysis. I'm not going to go through all the stages of modeling that rock, but essentially we're able to model the subsurface rock there. And then in Revit, we were cutting our sections, analyzing that against the foundation. But the great thing about Revisto is I can actually link those 2D sheets to that 3D space. So now these drawings that I'm producing, analyzing the subsurface rock, we now can visualize right with the drone scan. And so here, if I zoom in, I was actually checking like approximate sidewalk elevations. That's like an entryway into the garage. So I can kind of see like, yeah, the grading's working out so far, so good. Here we're just zooming back. And then the other thing we can do even in this platform is I can turn off just the architect's model, and I can look at just the PDF drawing I had right on top of the drone scan. So I know this also could play some factor in like some, if anyone on the call is doing some like, civil work, or I've seen it for, like heavy civil doing roadways and such. I don't have too many examples of that in here, but it's definitely a potential.
I think that's like the ability to create what actually exists and then meshing
Mhm.
that in ease as you're showing like layers just on off
Yep.
3D.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just, yep, integrated platform, like they say. And then this video, it was cool to kind of go in and we can kind of visualize what it looked like. This might be a little bit more of like that wow factor of just diving below the surface, and you have that drone scan on top, then you have whatever you model down below. So we're kind of swimming around the space between the rock and the grade that we had out there. Just check how we're doing on time here. Okay. The other thing that I'm really using it for a lot is really the analysis of the building to the surrounding site. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, you can do with a terrestrial scanner, like I mentioned before, but it's the cost and the time it takes to do it. Where this, I mean, I can just send the drone up and like, hours to have this put together. So for a lot of times, it's good enough for what we need. And so for this example, this is like a rendering of the project that we're constructing right now. And what you typically find is, it's um, just the scope of what the architect's doing. Obviously, they're going for the form of the building. But when you actually get out there in the site, you get all this, surrounding messiness of the context of the site. In this case, you can see all those utility wires, which, you don't get within that initial rendering. So that's where we're starting to use the drone scanning is uh, building building the site around the building and really contextualizing it. So in this one, we did a little analysis with the actual overhead wires and how far they had to get moved and whatnot. So we're pulling dimensions, offsets from buildings, whatnot. And this is just a little visual, allows you to see how easy it is to move around. And then this is where we're kind of doing some cool things with Aristo, where I can actually download that 2D file, and then I can manually align it with the 3D environment as well. So not only do we get that 3D scan, but I can, align that 2D file in there, and then it kind of links the 3D space back to that 2D environment. And like you mentioned before, the layers on and off, it opens up a lot more flexibility. So these are just some other visuals turning off. You can see different components of the building.
yeah, because that's awesome because your footprint and you can create a model, but then when you're building it, what are you building it around? What are you having to compete with as far as space for vehicles, cranes,
Mhm.
what have you? So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and then just the nature of the software. So I'm tracking some things in like 3D space, and when I link this 2D drawing back down, now I can see my like my marks and stamps and whatnot on that 2D drawing. So it's really bringing the drone captures into my coordination space, where before you're either kind of, either you're downloading it and you're marking it up in a Bluebeam file, or you're trying to work up in the site scan platform. But I haven't really found those platforms to be designed for annotating and following up in that space. It's more so, built for what it does, which is the photogrammetry part. This is just, I could do some markups as well. This is one example of some coordination on this job we were doing. So I was trying to coordinate this grease trap down here. And one of the big things was the reshore coming off that road. They had like temporary soil, they had temporary soil nails under the road, and we're trying to figure out if we can install the grease trap without having to basically install them. So we needed a one-to-one setback from face to curb. So using the model, I was able to do my own drawing and analyze it. But with being inside this platform, I could quickly flip on that drone scan and kind of back check my work. So this is just basically validating that, yeah, what we had modeled matches up with, face to curb here. And then the great thing about the space is then you can even, any angle you want to analyze it, we can do so. So it's really cool as we're starting to bring together, the model, the 2D drawings, and then the drone, 3D geometry all together in one environment. And you can see just how easy it is to move around. And I mean, you can see a bit of the noise there with the surface of the road. It's not exactly a nice flat plane. But like I said before, for what I'm trying to do, it's good enough. If I needed something a bit more, higher tolerance, then maybe we would look at, going another route.
Yeah, I think return on investments grow, and the value added become more people start to recognize it and see it, and it becomes helpful on more projects. And then as things, we've already seen it, right? Why is it that we can now easily get these drones out onto the construction sites? Because cost comes down, and we've seen lots of advancements with some of the technology just for the new M300, which is exciting, and other aircraft for that matter.
Yeah. So then in the manual section, I touched on doing some of the sleeve overlays. And then here, I'm just going to kind of give you an example of if we start using that automated mapping, what else can we do with that? So here's kind of that photogrammetry, 3D point cloud of a pre-pour condition. And the nice thing about it is one-to-one scale. If you start using ground control and really tying it to survey, you could rely on some of the dimensions a little bit more. But it's not too bad for just photos. I mean, all that detail you see there. So likewise, you get it, the point cloud, yeah. And then in this particular software I'm using, it also catalogs all your photos. So if you need to get a photo of a particular area, you can actually there's like a photo inspect tool. And I'm pretty sure most of the softwares have something similar to that. And then, like we mentioned before, you can get together that stitched single image. I mean, this is kind of a smaller one of just this pore area, but you can do the larger site or however big you're trying to capture. That's what this software is really great for, is stitching it all together in like a higher res photo.
Right, I'd say a larger area is where you're going to see even better results on those type of stitching. Someone asked just what software are you using for stitching?
So it'd be the site scan.
Site scan, okay.
Yeah, and that's doing what would be the flight creation and the stitching. We basically use just the same software.
Awesome.
Let me see here. I think this is a video. Yeah, this is just showing. So in that context, I would, I would overlay my document in Bluebeam like you see here. Similar thing that I showed before, flip on and off the drawing, and I'm really just visually back checking the work here. Then I might go in and note up, something that's missing. And I don't know if I have a good video. I mean, the thing that's great about the stitching together is you get that resolution. Like if I were to zoom way down in, I'm sure, Paul, you've talked about in the past, but like, what is it, the pixel, like how much resolution per pixel is kind of how they do it. But anyway, in here, this is also just showing some other files we can overlay, starting to get into those shop drawings and things beyond just the design model. And then,
yeah,
like I mentioned,
that ground sample distance stitching, like in that large area, like you said, when you can then zoom in and you can actually point out and document and find things.
Yep. And this is really just showing like all the different files. So not only do we have the design drawings or models, but we also have submittals and there's photos and a bunch of different things. So this is where I'm really using Revisto for, and we're definitely looking forward to some other workflows we could do with it. But the cool thing about this is now when I bring in this overlay document that I just referenced before, and I go ahead and I overlay it in the software, much like I showed with that 2D drone that we were able to overlay, now if I have these multiple drone flights in the software, I can, by dropping a stamp or locating it in 3D, I can quickly flip between all my drone flights. So this is something that when we've really started doing it in practice out on the job site, like so much, like the technology is actually so little the part of it. It's really, hey, when do I need to be out there to get the capture? You need to let me know when I need to be out there. Then there's different times, different things are installed. So there's so much collaboration amongst the team of just when you're going to go out there. That was like the biggest thing I'd say we found so far. And then this is just showing that, hey, we can also overlay, some of these, submittal drawings and just construction related drawings to help with the actual coordination of the job. So we're looking at some pour breaks here, just visualizing what's going to come out. And then the really cool thing here, this is kind of like, then this would be a little bit of the wow factor. I don't know that we've actually gone back and used this in practice, but it's kind of a proof of concept. So we can also take these drone photos and then superimpose them right on the model. And then so here is kind of a cool little visual of, you get that drone image that we captured from above, we can slide it right into our model, and then we can walk around it, basically visualizing what would be underneath the concrete. So this would be, if you had to come back and see something or just for validation purposes. So it's kind of looking at, which data from the drone is actually most valuable. Is it that point cloud, or is it really just that 2D image that we're looking for? And really just, I guess, refining that process going forward. And I think
That is too cool right there.
Yeah, so some of this falls into starts off as wow factor and then becomes, practical the more you move on. And I had some other things, but really it's just showing the integration of the drones, the models, the drawings, and some really cool software that's out there to do so. And then this is some other stuff that we're really using it for. It's really simple and easy to do, is you can go ahead and get your scan. And I think, then I'll bring it into like recap or something like that, and I can cut out, you see the squares that are missing? I basically just cut that out of the site. And then we can insert, the models that we get from the design teams. We can start overlaying some of our construction, equipment and logistical items on there. And I think in this, we were looking at crane radiuses and picking locations, trying to avoid, cranes from hitting one another, and really just visualizing that in the 3D context. Yep, it's a little just section. And then even maybe you're doing some 2D logistical drawings, you could slide that under the bottom as well. One slide, I didn't really have too many graphics for it, but one thing that we do actually use it for quite a bit is just that 2D image. Because sometimes you'll notice with job sites, or even just sites in general, I guess, if you go to Google Maps, sometimes it'll be like really outdated, or it's tough to get like a current site plan of a site. Sometimes it is very current. But with the drone, you can go out and just get, a really current site plan, and then you can just mark it up or overlay drawings or whatever just in 2D. We really find that almost to be like the most beneficial part. And then this is kind of just wrapping up here at the end. This is a little fun, just whatever, fun workflow we did here. So this is a project we had downtown, and I threw it in Revit right with, the design model. And then I found a camera family that I could get the properties to match our job site camera here. And so just in, our authoring software, I could drop in the camera and we could try to find if we could get the entire building in one camera where we'd have to mount the camera. So it turned out pretty good. We were actually able to determine, yeah, we could probably mount it up there and, do all that right from just the drone scan. And I guess integrating with the, AEC software. And I think that's kind of a condensed version I had there. Paul, you got any follow-up questions or anything you want me to go back and look at? Try to be a little tight on time. What are we, 40 in? I think that was good.
Yeah, no, there was a couple things that we could go back and discuss that are specific to any one slide. I think you did a great job presenting what's there, what you're doing, how Clancy and Thales is integrating drones, and like you said, visualization. I think I'm someone who can't can't visualize something, go out with to where something's going to get built, and then they're like, oh, we're going to do this, and in me, I can't see it, but I might be able to participate in the actual making it happen, right? I understand how to swing a hammer. And I think that's how a lot of folks are, and what you're doing is taking drones, leveraging it for the visualization, and a lot of folks are getting wrapped up in the, well, how accurate is that one versus how accurate is this one? And you're like, well, wait a second here. There's this whole way to integrate drones into construction and large construction projects to help folks visualize and see things, to identify things beforehand, ahead of time, make things more efficient. Is what are your thoughts on that or comments?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, when you first use a drone, the thing that jumps out is definitely the higher you go, it's like the more clarity you have of, larger sites. So that's kind of the initial things that jump out. People can just broadly see the entire site. And then that was like the sleeve stuff. I just put two and two together. I was like, I wonder how well this would overlay. And then it did. And then we kind of developed the workflow around it. But yeah, the visualization is a big one for just like projects that developers are working on. Sometimes they just want to visualize, hey, what's that view going to look like? Or also just building the good relationship with the architects, because, you saw in there, I mean, I was overlaying some models and whatnot, but, my workflow isn't built around and renderings. That's something that, architects really specialize in. So the more we develop a relationship, the more I could supply them with the views and the background stuff, where then they could start integrating it into their workflows. That's kind of where I foresee a lot of it going.
Awesome. We had a question or a little earlier on from Prashin, was asking about, is there any contingency planning? I think this is involved with the safety and the operation of the drone. So when you're going to do a flight, Kyle, and you're planning it, some kind of automated mission, what contingency, excuse me, or safety, aspects are you thinking that, and more specifically, like if there was some sort of failure during autonomous flight, how would you respond to
Right. So I
that?
guess, I mean, you'd probably know like the general things about it, but the unique thing about construction sites is, yeah, the activity going on. So a lot of times it's kind of this gray area too of like, you're not supposed to fly over, um, what is it, unwilling participants, or so, like people that aren't part of the mission. So really, you're not supposed to fly over top of anybody. So we try to do it like, times where the job site's wrapping up or on the weekends. Sometimes you can't do that. That's why a lot of times I like to fly manually actually over job sites, just so I can control it a bit more. And then with these softwares, you can even, like you mentioned, just upload any photos and it'll stitch it. So sometimes I'll actually
Hmm.
just capture photos manually and then upload it. So that way I can control what I'm over, or if, I mean, I don't really fly too close to, tower cranes and stuff like that, but you never know on a site if stuff's moving around. But that's where kind of your safety checklist would come into play, and also, coordination with the guys on the field, and that, everyone on the ground's aware of what's going to go on that day. People are, basically they know that you're there. You're taking into account, hey, I'm going to be in this area, so you're going to be safe, following all the regulations. But it's definitely,
Yeah,
there's definitely some gray areas out there, and
that's
that,
that's
yeah,
solid though, because you're never, what it's all about. You're never intending to operate, over people, over moving vehicles. We're not planning missions in that fashion, monitoring the hardware itself, and just like any other equipment that you can find on a job site, a crane, right, an
mhm,
excavator. There is levels of risk that that we identify and determine, and you put in place the mitigations that are there. And I think that's common, right, with what we're seeing across, not just with Clancy and Thays, but all companies operating in the construction space. So for that, I would say definitely know your platform and be aware of what's available and have those operational, procedures within the company. Let's see the questions. We had Frankie Davis Jr. He mentioned that he just passed his FAA 107 exam, and he'd be interested in reaching out and getting in touch with you, Kyle. So for him, I think we'll be sharing Kyle's contact information. He's also on LinkedIn. You can find Kyle Snyder with a Y. How many people, Steve Brink was asking, how many people are involved with one project?
As far as flying?
Drones, software manipulator, so I guess in general.
Yeah, well, pretty much it'd be like our department, like it's so pretty much it'd be just me, kind of jack of all trades on the one job. I think the kind of bottleneck we're running into that I'm seeing on jobs is the frequency in which you can fly and capture. That's kind of becoming like a little bit of the bottleneck, and I've talked to you, Paul, about getting drones out on the job site is probably like the next step. But for me, it'd be me physically going out there, flying, then downloading the software, kind of me handling it all myself. So I think going forward, it's how do you diversify that and just make it more efficient, widely used across the project.
Yeah. And I guess that runs into a question we had from Dudley, who's asking about construction companies working with independent drone businesses in order to kind of get imagery for their projects. My thought here is that, as companies learn and want to use drones on more projects, that might start opening up, avenues or opportunities for folks to kind of come in and build relationships and connections. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we definitely do use some third-party people. I think it also depends on like different stages may lend itself more than others. Because I could see, just this site you're looking at right here, how busy and congested it is. It's like, not there's a huge liability, you're bringing on other subs as well, but if you're bringing on someone to fly over top of the job site, it's just another factor in there where maybe you want to keep that in-house. But for some initial, site analysis or pre-con or marketing photos after the fact, that's where I think some people, definitely people with like high-end photographs and just more of the slick marketing graphics. I definitely see them being coming in there as well, but it's definitely there, but I think we're also definitely looking to handle as much in-house as we can.
Right. The train of thought here. What was it? I was going to ask you to talk about something, something specific that we had touched on recently.
Well, you were talking about like waivers and some stuff like that, but
I don't know if it was that. It was something someone might have mentioned, working with other folks as you grow and need more imagery.
Oh, gotcha.
But I don't know. Is Daniel? I want to just because I lost my train of thought here. Daniel, bring Daniel Buckner on here. Daniel is with the company Revisto, which Kyle spoke about during his presentation, and how it's integrating, and providing a space for some enhanced awareness into the projects in the 3D and 2D space. Daniel, please introduce yourself and just tell us, a little bit about the company and, talk to any of the folks on here that might be in a position that Kyle is in regards to trying to bring all this together.
Sure, sure. So I definitely appreciate it. Thanks again. My name is Daniel Buckner. I am the Southeast Territory Manager for Revisto. And as you guys got to see today, we bill ourselves as an integrated collaboration platform. So we can range and work with any types of model or project information, just from 2D all the way to 3D, and then now you're seeing the advanced workflows with the reality capture from point clouds and drone data as well. And you've heard Kyle really make references to this being really easy to use. And this is the basically the tool that gets it all out to the project team. I think there was another question earlier about how many people it kind of takes to get this sort of product. And this is what we really bank on. The fact that construction firms, architecture firms usually have really highly specialized people on their team. So you have a person like Kyle that is doing all of this high-tech things for your company, but it's really inaccessible to the majority of the project team if you don't have an intimate relationship or training with these products. So what Revisto does is that translation tool, right? You have somebody like Kyle who is creating these projects, creating these models, and then once it gets into Revisto, it can be deployed and available across the entire project team. And you don't necessarily need to be working at the level that he's at. This is just really the highest end of what we can do with all of this data visualization, and it can be as simple as just 2D. So being able to have a tool and platform that can leverage each of these different environments and be really neutral and unbiased to it. If you want to work in 3D, fantastic. If you prefer working in 2D, even better. You can go ahead and accommodate that. So what we're trying to do is accommodate more people of different skill levels and make the same amount of data and information available to them. Other than that, this has been a really fun, fantastic presentation. My eyes popped whenever you basically had that drone footage overlaid into the floor drawing. I haven't seen that either. You're gonna have to tell me how you did that, Kyle, because that is definitely cool. But I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here, guys, and happy to answer any other questions if you have any.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. And if you're able to like drop your information into the chat, email, excuse me, email or any contact information for the folks to reach out, that'd be awesome.
Sure thing.
So Kyle, thank you.
Sure.
You've done a great job. I don't know if we haven't had any really any more questions pop up.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of covered a large range of topics there, so I'm sure going in the future, we could always nail down and take, well, whatever, we could always dive into a bit more technical side of things, but I didn't want to get too detailed here.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
just you're like, the thing is every time I have an opportunity to do something like this with a industry professional who I've known, and to sit there and I learn something, and it's just so fascinating. You're talking about grease traps and things like that, and these measurements, and it's like, it's super, super interesting. And I know that there's got to be folks out there who are in your position who actually understand all of what you're talking about and are like, man, you know what? I think I can get this. This is starting to make sense. And it's not all about like perfect accuracy. Don't focus so much on, not that accuracy isn't important, but don't let that kind of, misinformation on you have to have this, or you can't do that, or this won't work, reach out with folks, especially, someone like Kyle. So Kyle, your email, if you don't mind dropping, anyway, someone might be able to reach out and connect with you into the chat. And we've got a question here from Daniel real quick. What range of company sizes does Revisto work with?
So we work with a whole wide range. We've got a couple different types of customers. One, if you want to look at the Whiting Turners, the Clancy and Fays, the really large general contractors who have had a BIM program and are looking to really level up and get more out of the technology investments that they've had. The other ones are the small to mid-market general contractors who don't exactly have the resources to hire and implement BIM with a full BIM team. It allows you to take one or two specialized people, basically hire on a smaller group, and basically, sorry about that, my call dropped. Basically allows them to mobilize and run the entire BIM coordination or virtual design coordination, and everybody else can participate really easily without a lot of training. So I like to make the example, I think I've told Kyle this before. Right now, BIM and VDC professionals and experts in our industry they're like fighter pilots, right? They're highly specialized. They go in for the most strategic jobs, do their job, and get out. What we're trying to do at Revisto is turn them from fighter pilots into commercial airline pilots, right? They're still doing the same amount of work. It still requires a high level of technical skill, but instead of being alone or with one other person in the cockpit, they have an entire commercial plane of project team members with them that get to benefit from that work. So it's really just amplifying what they're doing and making it more available to the project team on an accessible level.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. I see, Kyle, that question from David. Apologies, David, missed that in the chat there. Regarding baseline use for incorporating GCPs. And I think you kind of touched on it a little there.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's like a good standard practice. The more I've seen GCPs is like people back checking civil grading work, and when you're really like topography, you really want to get that correct. We're also working on that a bit more this year with our field engineering department and getting layout and getting those targets mapped. You kind of need those coordinates to start from. So that's kind of the bottleneck point there, I guess.
And determining how accurate do we need to be, and what do we need to, what's the accuracy we're going for, and then how do we actually accomplish that level of accuracy? And I think that's the question that people aren't asking first. They're just asking the questions of, well, how accurate is that drone, or what's and not understanding PPK, RTK, ground control points, and stuff like that. So great. Thanks for answering that question. GCP, so I guess just for any of the folks here at the end of this, as things wrap up and we disperse, ground control points. So ground control points, it's using known points within a site that you're mapping, taking the exact coordinates, and before you process these images into maps, models, you can actually incorporate that known location data. And what that will do is that'll increase your models. And here we go down the hole, right, Kyle? That's going to increase your geo, right? Your accuracy in regards to where this is in regards to the actual Earth, and not just your internal accuracy, your relative accuracy as far as like how long is this.
Yeah, so like a little example, we're working on it, like, you can get actual coordinates of whatever known elements out there or targets, and then when you put them together, you basically, I forget what they calibrate, but a number of photos, you locate it. So when it's generating the 3D geometry, it's pinned to actual real space. Because the tolerance of the GPS, what is it, like in feet, they basically say, I believe, right? Just like the satellites out of the box.
Yeah, so you're going to see between like 3 meters is probably going to be your high for like a tolerance, so right about 9 feet.
Yeah, like anyone knows, if you've used an iPhone to take photos and look at the map, I mean, they're always like, they could be all over the plot or all over the place. Essentially, it's the same thing with this. I mean, the satellite gets you in the vicinity, but if you're really looking for that tolerance, you really got to tie it to control.
Absolutely. Well, we reached our hour mark here. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you coming on. Great work that you're doing with Clancy and Thay's Construction. Again, big thank you to our sponsor, Revisto. Check them out. Reach out to Daniel if you have any questions. And to everyone, we appreciate you joining us and participating. Stay tuned. Follow the AEBSI North Carolina chapter. Check us out on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn. This right now is coming to you folks live on LinkedIn. So if you happen to tune in, follow us, see what it is we're about. We're working here in North Carolina, connecting folks, pushing education and helping with the adoption of drones. So again, thank you everybody and have a great afternoon, evening.